And that's why I'm sharing these things, because again, it's to have you work more effectively, because
Mm-hmm.
your life is not about work as much as, I love what I do, and Megan, I can tell you love what you do. And I'm sure people listening, they love what they do. It can't be 100% of your life. And you need to like step away, because like you just said, that's where you get your best ideas.
Welcome to Social Post, a podcast brought to you by Team Edgar. Each week, we bring you a guest to inspire your creativity, breathe new life into your marketing strategy, and get you motivated to take action in your business. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned entrepreneur, you'll walk away feeling like you took your social media marketing multivitamin. Enjoy the interview, and remember, what's possible for them is possible for you. And we can't wait to see your success.
Hey, Social Post, welcome back today. We are really excited to be joined by Kate Beeders, who is a breakthrough success expert, and she's going to share with us a lot of awesome mindset tips that are going to really make us a lot more productive. And they're based in neuroscience, which is really fun, so we can get the idea of the theory behind it and how we can put those into practice. So I'm going to pass it over to Kate to explain who she is, what she does a little bit, and then we'll get into a really fun conversation. So go right ahead, Kate.
Yay. Thanks so much, Megan. And I listen to voices all day long, and your voice is just like so great and energetic. So I'm sure
Thank
you've
you.
been complimented on it before, but it just automatically like draws someone and go, like, what's she going to say next? So my business is 10 years old. I'm what's called an accidental entrepreneur. And I started during the last bad economy, when the economy tanked, and I had been doing business development for about 15, 16 years, something like that. It was very successful. Considering I'm an introvert, I sold millions and millions each year. I learned all about overcoming objections, how to get repeat business, about asking for money, all that kind of stuff. And at one point, Megan, the economy was so good, like the money was just like flowing right in. Like it was almost like it was being printed in the basement. You could not spend it fast enough. It was so good. And then of course the economy tanked, and I interviewed, with other companies doing something similar, because my company ended up merging and getting acquired, and just kind of totally changed everything. And you just kind of say, like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And it was time for a reinvention. And I had started learning about mindset in the meantime, kind of toward the tail end of my career. And I accidentally ended up starting my own business, because I started getting clients, coaching people on mindset, and people kept going to me, well, how do you get clients? And finally I was like, well, geez, I might as well charge for this. So what I do is I teach people strategies. I teach both entrepreneurs and corporate professionals how to move up to that next level. So not only the strategy part of it, but also the mindset piece. And this is their fears, their doubts, their stories, which really comes down to, Megan, like what people believe that they are worth, or that what their value is, or what they actually can accomplish, how they show up in the world. And all these things really stem from a really long time ago. But I find that especially entrepreneurship is one of the fastest ways of bringing up all your fears and doubts, because all of a sudden you realize, like, I have no boundaries. I don't know how to talk about money. I don't know how to ask for what I want. I mean, all these things just totally start popping up for people. And the beauty of what I love is that the work I do, yeah, sure, it helps people, grow their business, make more money, bigger opportunities, all that kind of stuff. But it's not just in their business making, it's like everywhere else in their life, they start showing up in a more brilliant, the word I use is more in their brilliance. And that to me is really the whole point of this. Yeah, sure, making more money is great, but it's also how you're living your life, and that you're living a life that you totally love. So I've been doing that for 10 years. Proud to say I'm a member of the 5% Club, which only 5% of all entrepreneurs actually are in business for a certain length of time, actually make a certain amount of income, and actually have profitability. So I'm really quite proud of that, because I want to help more people do the same.
Yeah, that's definitely something to be proud of. And I love the term accidental entrepreneur, but I'm sure as you accidentally fell into such an awesome business, you stumbled upon, like you mentioned, stuff that was working well for you that you started charging your clients for. And I think that's one of the best ways to find a business that will last, because you've proven that something you do gets results. And that's why we spend money on things, to get results. So can you start by sharing a few things that our community could take action on or learn today, whether it has to do with mindset or those productivity tips that you share with your clients that get such great results?
Absolutely. And I want to kind of just put a couple things out there for anybody who's been in the corporate world, is that I always thought in the corporate world, and maybe you were brought up the same way, that it's all about working hard. I don't know if Megan, if that resonates with you. And it's, because especially so much of our early jobs, like in high school and college, all about punching in, punching out. And it's about the work you accomplish and how much work you can do and all that kind of stuff. And what I've realized with mindset, and these are some of the things I'm going to share with people, is that it's not so much about how much you work, it's more how you work. And that's really what makes the difference. Because what I want to share, I've got some really great tips and strategies I want to teach everybody, and things that they can really start to implement today. But the point is not to load more things on your to-do list, but help you get through it with more ease and flow. So at the end of the day, there's something of you left. I mean, I remember in corporate, it's like you make it through what you have to do, but oh my God, driving home, because that's when we used to drive to work. I mean, it sounds like so long ago, right? That you're not like a mess, that I feel energized and you're like, okay, what's next? And what else can I do is fun. So I've got some really cool things I want to share. And one thing I do want to share, which is kind of interesting, is one of the things I really love about neuroscience, and this is really cool, is that, when you think of neuroscience, it really technically is, in layman's terms, the study of the brain, right? And all the things that, when you read these articles, because neuroscience is like a hot trendy thing right now, you see all these articles, and my neuroscience teacher, the one I got certified from, she hates all these articles because she's like, most of them are not even true. But there are all these researchers, and they're the ones who do all these studies to find out this thing and that thing and all that kind of stuff. But the way I like people to think of neuroscience really is just to be able to work more effectively. That's really the whole point. When I teach neuroscience, I'm not giving anybody tests on where's your amygdala, where's your dendrite, all that kind of stuff, your cerebrum, none of that stuff. All I really care about is if you can grab at least like one of these things and it starts making an impact on you, then that is worth it. And then even better, neuroscience is this really great philosophy is like, then teach it to somebody else, right? Like, don't hold it all to yourself, share it. So the first thing I want to share, and I actually did a Facebook Live on it the other day, is multitasking. I want to just talk about for a moment, because Megan, do you multitask?
Oh man, I am going to say that I don't, because I know it doesn't exist. I've heard before, but I know I am guilty of doing too many things at once for sure.
Everybody does. I mean, and once you start talking about multitasking, then you start realizing how many times in the day you do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember, for me, like being in interviews, this is again before, where I am right now. So this is years ago, but being on job interviews or my resume, and it was like, you always put like, I'm a really fantastic multitasker. Like I can juggle, I can do 10,000 things for you at once. Kind of like, when you think about your logo, right? Edgar, I mean, all the arms, like I can do all. So Edgar, please don't take this personally. We want you to continue doing what you're doing, but this is for us humans, our mortals, right? That we can't do it. We want to leave it to you. So, it was always considered a good thing to be able to multitask. It meant that you could do all these things and all these amazing things at once. Look, like I can type and I can talk and I can read this and I can paint the ceiling at the same time. And what they found out is that there's only 3% of the population that's actually a good multitasker, right? 3%. And you know who those 3% are? They're not you or me, Megan. No
Oh
offense, no matter
God.
how smart we are. This is somebody like an ER doctor
Mm.
or a highly skilled pilot, because their brain starts functioning very differently during multitasking. So what I always thought is that if I were multitasking, like let's say if I was listening to you, let's say if I was listening to this repeat of this podcast, plus I was on typing something, I always figured my brain was just kind of divided, and one part's listening, one part's writing. I don't know if you thought that, and I figured it was just equally doing it and all's good. What's actually happening is the brain is actually bouncing back and forth like a ping pong ball. So in nanoseconds, it's doing the typing, listening, typing, listening, typing, listening. So most people who multitask, except for that 3%, are making lots of mistakes during multitasking. So what I want to share with everybody is please stop multitasking. I know you think, oh, isn't it good? I can do these 5 things at once. But what's happening is we're all making mistakes. And there's nothing worse than sending an email to somebody and realizing you put Dear Megan and you're actually sending it to George, right? And especially if it's a prospective client, it does not look good. Or how many times have you gotten an email and the person forgot to send an attachment?
The worst feeling when you hit that send and you realize
I know.
nothing's attached.
And if it's a friend like Megan, I've known you now for a couple of years. I mean, I would not think horribly of myself. I'd feel bad that I did it, but I know you. But if you were a prospective client and I did it, I mean, there's a whole lot more impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I really want to do is say to people, stop multitasking. And, even if you go like email, like, well, you guys can't see it's a podcast, but Megan can see me, like if you're looking at the phone and then you're on here and then you're doing this, even that is not good. That you really want to like block off time. So maybe you have an hour where you're doing your writing for your blog, or you're doing an hour for your meeting, or X amount for this, but do it in chunks of time, because otherwise you get a lot of that ping pong ball affecting your brain. And again, what happens is not only will you end up messing up a lot of these tasks, you will also end up being more stressed. So that's another thing I love about teaching neuroscience principles, is that when you really are using them effectively, you find at the end of the day, you feel a whole lot more relaxed. You don't feel as stressed as you typically do. So I challenge everybody who's listening to this, look, you're not going to totally stop multitasking. I get it. But if you can just 5% reduce it, just try that. And just notice a difference to say, hey, I'm really going to pay attention to this, or I'm really going to listen to this podcast. So do it. I'm going to challenge you. If you listen to this, put everything else. This podcast is probably only another 15 minutes or something, right, Megan? Just push everything else aside for 15 minutes. Right. If you want to write notes, that's good. But everything else, just push aside and just kind of listen. And I promise you that you will make less mistakes than if you're trying to multitask and send someone an email while you're listening to us. So that's the first thing. And I do know, I just want to share too, that there used to be this old joke, Megan, from years ago. And they had this commercial, and it said, they showed a woman in a business suit. And it said, you can bring home the bacon, you can fry it up in a pan, and then you can serve it to your man. So the idea is that for women, hey, you can multitask and you can have whatever you want. The point is, what they really said to women is, hey, you can do all this, but you need to do it all at one time. So I want to share, because this is really pushed on women. So I want to share that, first of all, there's an old myth that women are better multitaskers. That's not necessarily true, but really resist multitasking. And I know it's hard if you're working from home and you've got kids, but try to, if you can, do blocks at time, because otherwise you will find out that you're just going to be all over. Everything will not be done as well as you'd like. You'll end up having to spend time to fix it, and you'll have stressed headache at the end of the day. So that's the first thing.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I do find myself stressing so much when I'm trying to get multiple things done. And when you're stressed that much, you're going to get burnt out so much easier. So you're probably going to get less done anyway. So I love that a lot.
And making mistakes. And I don't know about you, Megan, but there's nothing more than I hate than realizing, oh, shoot, I put the wrong date. Now I got to go back into a system and fix it or something. Or, let's say someone's using your system for Meet Edgar, right? And, the categories. And if they're multitasking, not paying attention, well, maybe they put it under the wrong date, or they put it for the wrong group, or they put it for the wrong time. And then they'll go and they'll turn around and say, why isn't it working? Well, because you were probably multitasking and not paying attention.
Totally. And do it right the first time, and it'll save you more time.
Exactly. And then you get the results you want to. So that's the first one I want to share. The next thing along that line is that you want to take frequent breaks. So this is really important. What I tell people to do, and pretty much these days everybody has a cell phone, is set your timers. Like, you can set a little alarm to go off. And if you can have it go off, I mean, in quote perfect world, every 30 minutes is great. If not, if you can do it even once an hour, have it go off, and just take a little stretch break, that you get up and get away from your computer. And I know that a lot of times people think like break is a bad thing, like if you were in high school, you had a break, and that's when you'd either run out, and if you were a smoker, you'd have a cigarette, or else you grab something to eat, or you get on your phone or social media or whatever. That's not this type of break. This is just more just to kind of get away from this, clear your head. This is important too if you were teaching things. So if you guys are having Meet Edgar, I know a couple weeks ago you guys had like your big meetings, or where you guys did planning, like breaks when you're doing, if you are doing any big planning for your teams, make sure you're taking a lot of breaks, because it may seem less productive, like, oh, if we just work right through this, we can cram all this stuff in. But what happens is people's attention goes in and out and in and out and in and out again. And that's when people says, like, what did you just say? Or can you repeat that? What really is, because the brain just zoning in and zoning out. But if you take more frequent breaks, people will be more refreshed. And I don't know, I don't know if you want to admit, did you guys take a lot of breaks at your
So we
meeting?
are very lucky here that we take a lot of breaks during our work days, especially with our planning ones, because we do find that the ideas and the conversations are much more rich when you do have that time to yourself to get your thoughts organized. And I completely agree. It kind of goes against human nature of being like, we have to go, go, go. But that idea of just being like a human being for a minute, collecting yourself, you're going to show up much better. So we're lucky in that sense. And I've seen it work kind of in the opposite ways at previous positions I've been at, where you just feel like they're giving you breakfast, lunch, and dinner at work so that you're there all the time and never taking breaks and never getting out of the environment. But, it's like that idea that when you're in the shower, you get some of your best ideas because you're taking a break and your brain has time to process it. So I completely agree that even if you think you're going to be quote unquote wasting time, you typically come out on the other end with better results.
Yeah, and it's so important. And that's why I'm sharing these things, because again, it's to have you work more effectively, because your life is not about work as much as, I love what I do, and Megan, I can tell you love what you do, and I'm sure people listening, they love what they do. It can't be 100% of your life. And you need to like step away, because like you just said, that's where you get your best ideas. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually kind of really interesting. And I get so into this stuff. It's like I'm a mindset geek, when I hear things that are cool, that are actually transferable to how I work, not these like weird research things like we tested 12 rats and, all this kind of stuff, but the stuff that's really cool. And so we've all heard about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And what I've been teaching people, like Megan, I don't know if you know this, when the pandemic was about a month in, I was actually doing stress reduction workshops for hospitals, for front lines. I was donating time. Yeah, because, you figure, remember at that time, especially, they were short staffed, they were short equipment. Remember all the PPE equipment? There was not enough of it. They're working a zillion hours. There was deaths like crazy. It was just insane. So I kind of donated my time and did some workshops for hospitals around the country. And the way I was kind of framing it, then I started doing it for companies who wanted to hire me for it. The way I was framing it is that what we're going through is a trauma right now with this whole pandemic. And to understand it, and it's not just like a one-time trauma, like, oh, like you're in a car accident and you got hit once. It's like, boom, well, no one can see me, but it's like someone boxing and they're hitting you on the right side and the left side and the right side and left side, because every day there's something new that's affecting you, whether it has to do with the political scene, the social scene, the work scene, the personal life. I mean, everything. That it's like every day something else is changing. And so you're constantly being re-traumatized at different levels. So when you hear about somebody who has PTSD, you very often think about somebody who will have, what's the right word? Issues their whole life and be stuck in a certain place. But what researchers have found out, and this is so cool, this just like lights me up, is that you can actually take this trauma that you're going through and turn the bad into the good. So I always like to say is finding the opportunity in the challenge. So there's actually a term that's been coined called post-traumatic growth, and that most of us are actually primed for it if we step into it. In other words, you don't have to be special or have a certain IQ or be in a certain job function. Most of us can go there. It's a choice of either going right or going left. And I always say too, when I teach, is that we don't have a choice about opting in or opting out of the pandemic, but we do have a choice of how we show up in it.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I really want to say to people is that there is this thing called post-traumatic growth, and that's where you can like leap and bound, have growth in leaps and bounds if you step into it, as opposed to going into like, oh no, I'm a victim and look how awful all this stuff is. And please understand, I'm not saying this stuff isn't awful. I don't mean, I'm not trying to make light of it by any means, but I'm just saying, like for example, for me personally, one of the things I do, besides, private coaching and events and stuff, is I also keynote across North America. Well, first my events were postponed, then they were canceled, and these were paid speaking gigs. So that's a big thing to lose. And at first, of course, it's like heartbreaking because it's part of my business, But then I said, okay, so what's the opportunity? Well, I've got a 16-year-old Cairn Terrier. Actually now she's 16 in 3 months. And 16 years young rather. And she's my heart. She is absolutely my heart. And I don't really want to leave her with anybody right now because she gets a lot of medication. She has lost most of her sight. She's lost a lot of her hearing. She gets a zillion eye drops every day. She gets medication. So for me, the opportunity is, well, I can spend all this time with her. I don't have to worry about leaving her because I want to make sure, truthfully, no one is ever going to take as good a care as your four-legged child as you do. That's the truth. And so it's like the opportunity is to stay with her. So instead, I found speaking gigs that people are paying me for over Zoom. So it's basically finding the growth that way, as opposed to me sitting in a corner saying, isn't this terrible? So I really want to encourage everybody, focus on post-traumatic growth as opposed to PTSD.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've never heard that term before, but it reminds me of this philosophical concept that Ryan Holiday has a book about called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's basically showing you that if there's an obstacle, you're going to get more growth if you just approach it in this way of seeing the good that can come out of it. And I do think some of the coolest things that are happening right now out of this really tragic time, like you said, are people are finding new ways and new revenue sources for their businesses. Like perhaps your Zoom coaching services that you didn't offer before this will continue on when all of this is over, and that'll just open up your talents to a whole new group of people who wouldn't be able to find you if you were speaking live at an event maybe. So I completely think that, like you said, not making light of a situation, but really finding the way to grow from it can be a cool opportunity for us all.
Exactly. And like I said, I just heard of that phrase this past year, and I just love it because it just gives people more insight, gave me insight, gave me more desire. And so I hope it does the same for everyone else listening. The next one I want to share, and this is really important, especially with what we're going on right now, is that, with the pandemic, as I was mentioning, that where this is a trauma and things are just kind of like every day, there's this thing and that thing. And, wherever you live, there's different phases, what's open, what's closed, what you can do, how many people, all this kind of stuff. Right. And so one thing that is really, really important is because there is this feeling of loss of control right now, is to create some kind of routine in your life. Doesn't have to be the super fanciest routine, but just something that is yours and it is yours. So for me, every morning I go for a walk. I do certain mindset techniques as I'm walking, and that is my thing. That's my thing. And nobody can take it away. It doesn't make a difference who gets elected president in a couple of weeks. If anyone gets elected, we don't know, right? It doesn't make a difference if the sun's out. It doesn't make a difference, what the COVID rate, none of that matters. That is my thing, and it makes me feel good. So I really want to encourage everybody to have a routine every morning. In fact, the more routines you can have, the better. But if nothing else, even just start out with some kind of routine for your morning. That will definitely help you feel like you're back in your power. And when you're in your power, that's a mindset thing that allows you then to come from a place of confidence, which allows you to step out of your comfort zone and do things that you might not normally do, to make that phone call, to ask for more money, to ask someone to partner, to ask for a favor, whatever the heck it might be.
Yeah, I love this idea of routines. And I find that almost all successful people that we talk to on this podcast have that special time in the morning that sets you up, that's just for you, so that when you go into the day, you're not rattled by things that are out of your control, because you are reminded, like you said, to control the controllables. So that's a really good and easily achievable tip that we can all take into our lives today.
Well, that's what I love. All these strategies I'm sharing, you don't have to, like, some things you have to go out and buy like 10 zillion things and,
Mm-hmm.
order it or whatever. And this is just a matter of, I've got one more I want to share, if that's okay with you, Megan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, it's just a matter of people just pick one today that you really like and start with that. And you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to go buy anything. Let me know, let me know if you tried it and how it affected you. But there's nothing, you don't need to buy or order or take a class. It's just rock on with it. So last one I want to share has to do with social media, but Megan, it's nothing against Meet Edgar. It's a good thing. Okay. I just want to share, we love Edgar. We love Edgar so much, but this is actually about people who get obsessed with social media and constantly checking it. So what has happened is, and I'm not going to get into people checking their feed for their friends. That's not what I'm talking about right now, but I am talking about checking the news. because what researchers have discovered is that people get addicted to checking their feed, whether, they're checking on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or Pinterest or TikTok or whatever the heck they're checking. They get addicted to it. So like every break they check, every time they're waiting in line, they check. I mean, you go to the supermarket, you see people in line, everyone's down looking at their phone. They'll be on a date, they check. I mean, everywhere people are checking. But the problem with that, so I'm not even going to go into any of that stuff. That's another whole another show. But what I really want to talk about is people who get addicted to the news, because the news is really lowering people's happiness quota down, and it's bringing in people down, and that's not what we want. Because not that you want to go around going, "Oh, isn't life great?" Because that's not where we are. But you don't want to be in a depressed state, and that's something that's going on very seriously. I mean, even Michelle Obama was saying that she was dealing with low-level depression. That's very, very common right now. So this tip I love, because it's a way of kind of combating that, which is very, very prevalent for most people right now. And they're saying it's even going to get worse as the holidays hit, because the length of time plus it's holidays, all this kind of stuff. So what I want to share is that with the news, because the news, so what happens is people get addicted. It's like a form of like dopamine, right? So, it's like you get that high and that buzz, like, ooh, but ultimately you're not getting the addiction, the positive part is going away. Instead, it just becomes the addiction. It's like smoking a cigarette. You don't even enjoy the cigarette anymore, but it's like, you got to have it. So what researchers have really suggested is limit your checking of the news. Okay. So however you check your news, whether you watch it on TV, whether you watch it, get your news through Twitter, whether you follow one of the news companies on Facebook, whatever it is, limit it. They suggest limiting it to once a day. Okay. So it's a set time. So it isn't every break. It isn't every 5 minutes. By this point, there's nothing that's going to happen between now. Would you agree, Megan, between like now and tonight that we absolutely have to know about? I'm just saying really and truly.
I completely agree.
But what happens is every time we look at it and we see, oh, the rate has gone up in these 10 states, or this happened, or this one didn't wear a mask, or this one just died, or this thing, that thing. And again, I'm not trying to make light of it, but what I'm really trying to be a protective mama bear for all you guys, for your mental health, is that every time you look at it, it's bringing you down and down and down. And most of these things you really don't need to see as frequently as you do. So what they're suggesting is just check it once a day, and have only one trusted person that you speak to about current events. Because what happens is, if you start talking to everyone, like if let's say, Megan, you and I have a conversation, like, oh, what do you think about this? And then I go talk to someone else. Well, it just keeps festering around in my head. And Megan, maybe you've got one opinion, and Sue has another opinion, and George has another one. And it just keeps staying clustered all over my head. So they're saying, pick one time a day, pick one person, really limit it, because otherwise it's just going to keep bringing your mood down. And that's not healthy for everybody.
Yeah, I love that as something that I particularly think Edgar is helpful for, actually. You started out saying this isn't about Edgar, but one of the things we really love to stress to people is along these lines that you shouldn't be creating where you're consuming your social media. So if you're going on to these platforms and posting all the time, it's likely you're going to be distracted by all of this in the feed, because what's in the feed is supposed to emotionally charge you a lot of the time. That's some of the most consumed content. So if you're creating outside of where you're consuming, you're probably going to have a lot healthier of a relationship with social media, where you feel like you're in control of it and you don't feel like it's controlling you and you have to be on there for your business all of the time. So I think Edgar actually helps you achieve that quite a bit. And I love how simple all of these tips are. And kind of going back to what you were saying, this idea that, guys, you should really take into account that you don't need to buy anything special. You don't need to go out there and completely redo your routine in order to take these into account into your life. And I think that's some of the things that we oftentimes think we have to buy a lot of expensive things to fix our productivity problems, when we should look at these baseline level things that Kate has been teaching today and see if they are in order before we start layering more stuff onto them. So I think that's a really wise starting place for us all. Kate, thank you so much for sharing all of these.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I'd love, if it's okay, I'd love for people to like either share it, let me know how they do with this, find me on Facebook or, social media, or email us at info@katebeeders.com.
Oh yeah, where can people find you on social?
Well, Kate Beeders, KateBeeders, I think
Perfect.
that's pretty much everything, or email us at info@KateBeeders. But I'd love to know too, like which is your favorite? Because that always is good for me to know, like which one are people choosing to do first? And usually it's a path of least resistance, right?
Totally. Yeah. I'll go ahead and put all of that information in the show notes, guys. So go ahead and take action on these awesome tips and let Kate know what you've been loving the best. And let us know too at Me Edgar what you liked from this episode. Keep the conversation going on Instagram and Twitter. And we'd love to hear from you. Kate, again, thanks so much for sharing your expertise today.
Thanks so much, Megan.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And be sure to keep the conversation going with us on social. We're at Meet Edgar on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So let us know your biggest takeaway from today's episode. And don't forget to tag us. Visit www.meetedgar.com and start a free trial to up-level your social media marketing strategy today. Happy posting!